What we need is for our children to use kind of the most natural tool they have to be able to figure out the world. What is it that they use to navigate the world, to master their environment, to figure out problems? And the answer is play. The American Academy of Pediatrics made a decision to stand in defense of play, and you have to ask why. It seems like such a natural, obvious thing that children should be playing.
It stumps parents when I ask them, tell me about your children's play. And the first thing they want to talk about is, they organize soccer and they organize baseball and, all that stuff. And I said, that's not what I'm talking about. He said, well, he likes to play video games. I said, that's not what I'm talking about.
So pediatricians see kids when they're in trouble. We see kids when they're stressed out. We see kids when they have manifestations of anxiety, when they have the symptoms of fear and failure, whether that's eating disorders or whether that's self-mutilation or just stress and anxiety. We see this. We see kids who are obese. We see an alarmingly increased rate of obesity.
I think that the social isolation that kids are experiencing is something we are going to pay a big price for in the future. Kids are no longer running outside, finding a community of kids in their neighborhood and doing what I call that rambunctious, exuberant play.
There seem to be at least two things that are newish that might be pushing us in this direction. One is that the college admissions process is really frightening parents. And you're no longer guaranteed a place at an elite college just because you're walking there or because you come from a certain family. People are feeling more worried about the fact that the only way to move ahead is to get admission at a certain college. And they're doing what they think it takes to make sure their kids gets there, at great detriment to this generation.
What you come upon is that there might be some good play through maybe the age 3, age 4, but once they start getting into pre-K kindergarten, it's literacy, numeracy. One parent, I remember telling me that she brought her kid to me because she wasn't participating in counting. The other kids could count to 100. And this is like a 4.5-year-old kid. And she said she doesn't know how to count to 100. I said, why does she need to? I mean, what is she going to do with this information, at that age?
Many kids who are getting out of high school, who have oriented their whole junior high and high school years into getting into college, have defined success narrowly. And what they've been looking for is numbers and good grades and the right extracurricular activities. What this does is it makes it so that kids are scared to think outside the box. It is a natural way to produce perfectionistic kids. In other words, if you have a history professor and you need to get an A, and you have a history professor who likes one particular set of ideas, and you have to write an essay, guess what? You're going to write an essay about that. What that means, again, you're afraid to think outside the box. You're afraid to be judged. Therefore, you're going to go out of your way to be perfect. You're going to fear failure. In order to succeed in the real world, you need to be able to fail.
Failing is part of the human experience. And knowing that you can't do everything, to be the elite athlete and everything. And that's where, if everything wasn't so competitive and kids could just go outside in their neighborhood and play, this kid wouldn't be worried about that. We are tiring the brain out by what we are doing to kids nowadays in school. And then we expect them to go all day, starting like 7, 8 o'clock in the morning, finish school at 4, we push them into all the structured activities, come back home, and your brain is supposed to be still on. Kids are tired, they're exhausted. And what I see later on is that they say, I've had enough.
So we want parents to be very involved with their kids' play sometimes. What we also want is for kids to be able to do things on their own, rather than sign up for organized soccer, organized baseball, organized art, organized music, which we love. There should be a little bit of that in everybody's life. But we want some free time for kids just to choose to do whatever they want to do, so they can create their own fantasy world, choose their own friends, exercise their own bodies.
You would get more cooperation, you would get more empathy, you will get conflict. That's part of the human condition. But it would be amazing if we leave the kids alone and step back, only go in if it's necessary, to see how they will learn the conflict resolution.
I think the other issue gets back to the fact that there's a professionalization of parenthood. Almost all families have 2 working parents. We all want to be great at our job, and we all want to be great at being parents. Then the media feeds us images about what good parenting is. We should put a kid in front of a certain video when they're 6 months old so they can become brilliant. We have to buy this for our kids, sign them up for this activity. As a result, we don't feel like we're good parents unless we're doing that.
The kids' schedule has now got to fit so much more with a very hectic parental schedule.
Right, we've become highly efficient people. You know, everybody's working hard. That's wonderful. But to do everything, we have to become masters of efficiency.
The human brain reacts to stress with an increase in the stress hormone cortisol. And when that stays up there, what you get is very anxious people.
We believe that what needs to happen is success needs to be redefined. You know, every family needs to come up with their own definition, but you want to hear mine? Success is being happy, being kind, being compassionate, being generous, being creative, and being innovative. Those are the character traits that are going to lead us into the future with the next generation. And if we redefine success that way, we're going to want a childhood that's happy. We're going to want kids who can think outside of the box, who can go beyond rigid parameters. To do that, they have to be willing to fail. They have to be willing to scrape their knee. They have to be willing to fall down. They have to know how to get back up on their own. And they have to be able to take the chances that are going to, in the future, produce the great ideas.
The capacity to love, to be in a reciprocal relationship with respect and all that. The capacity to do some sort of work, meaningful work, and work that also gives back to other people. And then the capacity to play. So if we put those 3 together and you've raised a child who can do that, I love it. I tell you, when I speak to my kids, one of my first questions is, are you having fun?
If we understand that a huge part of success is happiness, which we all know, don't we? And if we understand that a huge part of success is creativity, then we're going to begin to look and we're going to say, what is it that creates creative kids? And child play is a big part of it. Being able to fall down and get up yourself is a big part of it. Being willing to fail sometimes so that you can figure out how to do better next time is a big part of not being afraid of creativity.
We want to have a child who is able to handle all the trials, tribulations, the joys of life. Because that's what life is. Life is not one thing. And you will have anxiety, but can that child cope with that anxiety? So that you don't want to go around protecting your child from everything, but you want to be able to help them with the tools to handle things as they come along, and they will come along. And if a child has had play and joyfulness as part of their lives, then I think that provides a repository, sort of a bank of some emotional goodies to help you through when the tough times come.
We have to look at the broader issues in society. We have to look at the schools and make sure that there's still recess, make sure that there's still creative arts, there's still the gym. We've got to make sure that we protect that for our kids. We have to look in our communities. We have to say, are there safe places for kids to play? You know, we can't fight the obesity epidemic by telling kids to go out and play when there aren't safe places for them to play. We just can't do it.
So I think there has to be some really active efforts to try to build community. You've got to build community. And then in the language of psychiatry, we talk about creating a holding environment for kids. It's the community that can do that and hold the children. You know, the famous quote of "it takes a village to raise a child," I agree with it, but the village has to be a functional village.
We start by saying, trust in childhood. Understand that play is the work of childhood. Understand that children are able to find a lot of solutions themselves. Let's trust that. When we do that, we will raise a confident generation. We start there. We have to invest. We have to invest in childhood and recognize that it is a unique time that sets up the next generation that's going to lead us. We have to invest. So pediatricians see kids when they're in trouble. We see kids when they're stressed out. We see kids when they have manifestations of anxiety, when they have the symptoms of fear and failure, whether that's eating disorders or whether that's self-mutilation or just stress and anxiety. We see this. We see kids who are obese. We see an alarmingly increased rate of obesity.
I think that the social isolation that kids are experiencing is something we are going to pay a big price for in the future. Kids are no longer running outside, finding a community of kids in their neighborhood and doing what I call that rambunctious, exuberant play.
What we need is for our children to use kind of the most natural tool they have to be able to figure out the world. What is it that they use to navigate the world, to master their environment, to figure out problems? And the answer is play. The American Academy of Pediatrics made a decision to stand in defense of play, and you have to ask, why? It seems like such a natural, obvious thing that children should be playing.
It stumps parents when I ask them, tell me about your children's play. And the first thing they want to talk about is, they organize soccer and they organize baseball and, all that stuff. And I said, that's not what I'm talking about. He said, well, he likes to play video games. I said, that's not what I'm talking about.